I didn't get scared when I heard the first knock on the cabin door. I got scared when I heard the same knock answer back from inside the house. It was late October in the Appalachian Mountains, just a few days before Halloween. I had rented a small, isolated cabin for the weekend to get away from work and clear my head. The place sat at the end of a gravel road that barely showed up on GPS. Trees surrounded it so tightly that even during the day, sunlight struggled to reach the porch. That evening had been quiet in a way that felt heavy. Fog rolled in early, the kind that sticks low to the ground and makes the woods look endless. I cooked a simple dinner, listened to the wind push through the trees, and tried to enjoy the silence. By midnight, the temperature dropped sharply. The cabin creaked and popped as the wood adjusted, but nothing felt unusual at first. I checked the locks before going upstairs, more out of habit than fear. The owner had left a note in a binder on the kitchen counter saying to keep the doors locked at night because of wildlife. I remember thinking it was just a liability thing. Bears, coyotes, nothing more. I lay in bed scrolling on my phone until my eyes got heavy. The signal was weak, barely usable. Eventually, I turned the screen off and listened to the mountain sounds fade into quiet. That was when I heard it. 3 slow knocks on the front door, not loud, not aggressive, just deliberate. I sat up immediately, my heart starting to race. At first, I assumed someone was lost, maybe a hiker or a neighbor. It didn't make sense, but it was the most logical explanation. I waited. No voices, no footsteps, just silence. Then I heard it again. 3 knocks, same rhythm, same pauses. I got out of bed and stepped into the hallway, moving slowly so the floorboards wouldn't creak. The cabin was dark except for the faint glow from the microwave clock downstairs. I stood at the top of the stairs, staring at the front door. Before I could make a decision, another sound stopped me cold. 3 knocks. Not from the door. From the wall inside the cabin. It came from the bedroom wall behind me. The sound was unmistakable. Knuckles against wood. Same rhythm, same timing. I turned around slowly, my skin prickling. The wall was solid, no vents, no pipes that could explain it. I pressed my hand against it, half expecting to feel movement. There was nothing. Downstairs, the front door knocked again. 3 knocks. Upstairs, the wall answered. 3 knocks. I felt trapped in the middle of something I didn't understand. My brain scrambled for logic. Maybe someone outside was hitting the house and the sound was echoing somehow. Maybe the cold was doing something strange to the wood. But the timing was too perfect. I backed away from the wall and crept down the stairs, keeping my eyes on the door. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. I leaned toward the window and looked out. The porch was empty. No person, no movement, just wet boards and the dark forest beyond. I stepped back, my pulse pounding in my ears. That's when the knocking moved. This time it came from the side window near the living room. 3 soft knocks, closer than before. I froze, staring at the glass. Rain streaked down the window, distorting the reflection of the room behind me. I didn't see anyone outside, but I had the overwhelming sense that someone was standing just out of view. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. It was a delayed automated message from the cabin owner reminding guests to lock doors at night. The timing made my stomach drop. As soon as the vibration stopped, I heard it again. 1 knock, a pause, 2 knocks. The pattern had changed. Upstairs, the bedroom wall repeated it. 1 knock. Pause. 2 knocks. My mouth went dry. Whatever was happening, it was listening. I whispered, "Stop," without thinking. Immediately, the wall knocked again, copying the exact timing of my word. That was when panic took over. I ran upstairs, flicked on the bedroom light, and scanned every corner of the room. Nothing had changed. The window was locked. The closet was empty. The wall looked normal. Then I heard it, a knock on my bedroom door. 1, pause. 2. I stepped back until my legs hit the bed. I could hear breathing on the other side of the door. Slow, controlled, not labored, not rushed. Someone was standing there. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I barely breathed. After what felt like minutes, the breathing stopped. The knock didn't come again. Eventually, I heard footsteps moving away, slow and deliberate, heading down the stairs. The front door opened, then closed. Silence returned to the cabin like nothing had happened. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat on the bed with the light on until morning, watching the door. When daylight finally came, I packed my things and left immediately. Before I drove away, I checked the porch. There were no footprints. But carved lightly into the wooden door frame, Right where someone would stand to knock were 3 shallow marks. Then a space. Then 2 more. I never went back to the mountains alone after that. And sometimes, late at night, when my apartment is quiet, I still hear 3 knocks somewhere in the distance waiting for an answer. Story 2. The man who was always ahead. I first noticed him because he was standing in the wrong place. It was Halloween night, and I was driving alone through a stretch of Appalachian highway I'd taken dozens of times before. The road cut through dense forest, no houses, no lights, just long curves and occasional mile markers. I had left later than planned, and the sun had gone down fast. Fog hung low over the asphalt, thin but persistent, and my headlights carved a narrow tunnel through it. About 20 minutes into the drive, I saw a man standing on the shoulder of the road. He wasn't trying to flag me down. He wasn't waving or moving at all. He just stood there, facing the road, hands in the pockets of a dark jacket. My headlights passed over his face for less than a second, but it was enough to make my stomach tighten. His expression was blank, not distressed, not angry, just empty. I slowed instinctively, then kept going. People do strange things out there sometimes. Hunters, locals, drunk drivers who walked away from wrecks. I told myself that if he needed help, he'd move toward the road. In my rearview mirror, I watched him disappear into the fog. Less than 5 minutes later, I saw him again. He was standing near a mile marker ahead, same posture, same jacket, hands in pockets. This time he was closer to the road, close enough that I could see the fabric of his pants moving slightly in the wind. I checked my speed without realizing it. I hadn't turned off anywhere. There were no side roads. No way he could have gotten ahead of me that fast. I passed him again, my pulse picking up. As I did, I glanced sideways. His head turned slowly, following my car. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down this time. I kept my eyes forward and told myself not to overthink it. The mountains do weird things to perception at night. Fog bends distance. Your brain fills in gaps. A few minutes later, my radio cut to static. I reached for the dial, irritated more than scared, and that's when I saw him for the 3rd time. He stood directly ahead, just past a curve, closer than before. Close enough that I could see his breath in the cold air. Close enough that I could make out the creases in his jacket. I hit the brakes hard. The car slid slightly before stopping, tires crunching on gravel at the edge of the road. He didn't flinch, didn't step back, just stood there, watching me through the windshield. I rolled the window down an inch, just enough to speak. "Are you okay?" I asked. My voice sounded too loud in the silence. He didn't answer. I waited a few seconds, then tried again. "Do you need help?" Still nothing. He took 1 step closer. I rolled the window back up and put the car in drive. As I edged forward, he stepped aside, letting me pass, his eyes never leaving mine. I didn't look back this time. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I told myself I'd imagined how close he was, that stress and darkness were messing with me. I focused on the road, on getting home. Then I saw headlights ahead. Relief washed over me. Another car meant witnesses. Normalcy. I followed the lights until they turned off onto a small pull-off near a trailhead parking area. Without thinking too hard about it, I pulled in behind them. The lot was empty. No car, no engine noise, nothing. I sat there with the engine running, my breath fogging the windshield. The trees pressed in close around the lot, branches swaying slightly. It felt like the world had shrunk to just that small patch of gravel. Then I heard footsteps, slow, crunching. I locked the doors. The sound moved around the car, deliberate, unhurried. I could see a shadow passing through the headlights, but no clear shape. The footsteps stopped beside my driver's door. I stared straight ahead, afraid that if I turned my head, I'd see him inches from the glass. A knock came against the window. 1 knock. A pause. Then another. I didn't respond. Another knock came, harder this time, and I felt it through the door. My phone had no signal. The dashboard clock read 11:58 p.m. Halloween night. I pressed the accelerator. The car lurched forward, gravel spraying behind me as I pulled back onto the highway. I didn't look in the mirror until I was sure I was moving fast enough. The road behind me was empty. No man, no headlights, no movement. I drove the rest of the way home without stopping, checking my mirrors every few seconds. When I finally reached a populated area, my shoulders dropped for the first time in an hour. The next morning, I called the local sheriff's office. I explained what I'd seen, careful to keep my voice calm, reasonable. The deputy listened, then told me something that made my chest go tight. There hadn't been any reports of stranded people on that road. No accidents, no hikers, no calls at all. Out of curiosity, I drove back that way later in the afternoon. At the mile marker where I'd first seen him, I noticed something I'd missed in the dark. There were footprints in the dirt shoulder. They didn't lead away from the road. They didn't lead toward the trees. They faced the highway and then stopped, as if whoever made them had never moved again. I don't take that road at night anymore. And every time I see someone standing on the shoulder of a highway, I wonder how long they've been waiting and who they're really watching. Story 3. The exit that wouldn't let me leave. I knew something was wrong the third time my GPS told me to take the same exit. It was just after midnight on Halloween, and I was driving home through the Appalachian Mountains after visiting a friend. The road was familiar enough that I barely thought about it. 2 lanes, long curves, dense forest on both sides. The kind of highway where the darkness feels close, like it's leaning in. I had my GPS on mostly out of habit. Cell service was spotty out there, but the navigation usually worked offline. The night was quiet, no traffic, no wind, just the steady hum of tires on asphalt. The first time the GPS rerouted, I didn't question it. A calm voice told me to take exit 47. I slowed, signaled, and took the ramp. The exit dumped me onto a short stretch of road that curved back toward the highway. I frowned, assuming it was a detour or a mistake. Within a minute, I merged back on. The GPS recalculated. Continue for 2 miles, then take exit 47. I glanced at the screen, annoyed. I zoomed out. The route looked normal. I shrugged it off and kept driving. When the exit sign appeared again, identical to the last one, a small chill crept up my spine. Same number. Same reflective scratches, same bent corner on the signpost. I passed it this time. The GPS recalculated instantly. Make a legal U-turn when possible, then take exit 47. I turned the volume down. Sometimes technology just glitches. I knew the road. I'd driven it before. I told myself to trust my instincts, not a screen. A few minutes later, my headlights swept over something that made my foot hover over the brake. An abandoned roadside attraction. A rusted sign shaped like a cartoon animal stood crooked near the tree line. The paint was peeling so badly I couldn't read the name. A small parking lot sat empty beside it, cracked pavement swallowed by weeds. I didn't remember it being there. As I passed, the GPS spoke again. Take exit 47. My hands tightened on the wheel. I checked the time. It was 12:21 a.m. I drove another mile. The exit sign appeared again. Same scratches, same bend. This time, I felt a spike of panic. I slowed and pulled onto the shoulder, hazards blinking. I put the car in park and stared at the GPS screen. The map showed me moving, but only within a small loop. 5 miles, over and over. I turned the phone sideways, zoomed out more. The rest of the map looked empty. No towns, no roads branching off. I got back on the highway and kept driving straight, refusing to take the exit. The road felt longer now. The darkness deeper. My headlights didn't seem to reach as far. When the exit sign appeared again, I swore out loud. I took it. The ramp curved down into a narrow road bordered by trees. The same abandoned attraction loomed ahead, closer this time. I slowed without meaning to. Something about the place pulled my attention like I was supposed to look at it. The parking lot was empty, but the building looked different. One of the windows was broken now. I was sure it hadn't been before. I didn't stop. I followed the road as it curved back toward the highway and merged again. The GPS recalculated. Continue for 1 mile, then take exit 47. I felt like I was breathing through a straw. I tried calling someone, anyone, but my phone showed no service, not even an emergency signal. The radio crackled to life suddenly, static spilling out. I turned it off immediately. The silence felt safer. The 4th time I saw the exit sign, my stomach dropped. The cartoon animal on the roadside sign was gone. In its place was a plain wooden board nailed crookedly to 2 posts. No words, just a dark smear where something had been painted over. I didn't remember the attraction having multiple signs. As I passed it, I noticed something else. The parking lot had tire tracks now, fresh ones. They led toward the building and stopped. I didn't take the exit this time. I accelerated, my speed climbing higher than I was comfortable with. The road ahead stretched out endlessly, straight and empty. No exits, no signs, just trees. I drove like that for what felt like 20 minutes, my eyes scanning for anything familiar. My fuel gauge dipped lower, faster than it should have. Then, without warning, the GPS spoke again. Take exit 47. The sign appeared out of nowhere. I slammed the brakes, pulling onto the shoulder hard enough to feel the seatbelt bite into my chest. My hands shook as I put the car in park. I looked at the GPS screen one last time. The route ended there. No destination, no remaining distance, just a blinking arrow spinning in place. I sat there, breathing hard, until a sound made me flinch. A knock. Not on the window, on the roof of my car. One knock. Light. Deliberate. I froze, staring straight ahead. I didn't look up, I didn't move. Another knock came, closer to the windshield this time. Then, silence. I don't remember making the decision to drive. I just did it. I threw the car into gear and sped forward, tires screaming as I merged back onto the highway. The exit never appeared again. I drove until the road finally led into a town, lights blooming like a lifeline. When I checked my phone, the GPS showed a normal route home, like nothing had happened. Later, I checked my location history. For over an hour, my car had never left a 5-mile stretch of highway. Sometimes, when I use navigation late at night, the GPS still hesitates for a second, like it's about to suggest exit 47 again. Story 4. The truck that waited. I noticed the truck because it didn't pass me. It was just after midnight on Halloween, and I was driving through a mountainous stretch of the Appalachians on my way to a job interview the next morning. Snow hadn't fallen yet, but the air was cold enough that fog hovered low over the road. My headlights felt weak against it, like they were being swallowed a few feet ahead of the hood. The highway was mostly empty. A few minutes after I merged on, I saw the headlights of a semi-truck appear behind me. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was how close it stayed. At first, I assumed the driver was impatient. I moved to the right lane to let him pass. He didn't. I sped up slightly. The truck matched my speed perfectly. I slowed down. The truck slowed down. Its headlights stayed centered in my rearview mirror, filling it completely, bright enough that I had to flip the mirror down. Even then, I could feel the presence of it behind me, like pressure on my back. I told myself to stay calm. Mountain roads don't give truckers a lot of chances to pass. Maybe he was just waiting for a straightaway. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The truck never passed. Every time the road curved, I expected to see the headlights swing into the opposite lane. They never did. They stayed directly behind me, close enough that I could see the outline of the grille through the glare. I tried an exit. The moment I signaled and slowed, the truck slowed too. When I turned onto the exit ramp, the truck followed. That's when my stomach dropped. The exit led to a small service road with no buildings, no lights, just a stretch of cracked pavement and trees pressing in close. I pulled over under a single flickering streetlight, my heart pounding. The truck stopped behind me. Its engine stayed running. I sat there, hands locked on the wheel, listening to the low rumble vibrating through my seat. The truck didn't honk. The driver didn't get out. It just waited. After maybe 30 seconds, the truck slowly backed up and pulled back onto the highway. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding and waited another minute before following. When I merged again, the road was empty. I laughed shakily, telling myself I'd overreacted. Maybe the driver thought I needed help. Maybe he was just confused. 5 minutes later, the headlights reappeared. Same distance, same position. I felt cold all over. I changed lanes again. The truck followed. I adjusted my speed again and again, and each time the truck mirrored me. The road climbed higher into the mountains. Fog thickened. My visibility dropped, and the world narrowed to the lines on the pavement and the white glare behind me. I took another exit, this one clearly marked as a maintenance road. I didn't slow. I swerved onto it, gravel popping under my tires. The truck didn't follow. Instead, it slowed on the highway and stopped just past the exit, angled slightly toward me. The headlights stayed on. I rolled to a stop, my car shaking. I stared back at the truck through the fog. We sat there facing each other, separated by distance and silence. Then, slowly, the truck's headlights turned off. The engine kept running. I felt a surge of panic. I put the car in reverse without thinking and backed farther down the maintenance road until trees blocked my view of the highway. I turned around and drove until the road dead-ended at a locked gate. I sat there in the dark for nearly 10 minutes listening. When I finally worked up the nerve to go back, the highway was empty. No truck. No lights. no sound. I drove the rest of the way home without stopping, checking my mirrors constantly. The next morning, I mentioned the truck at a gas station while paying. The clerk looked at me for a long moment before shaking his head. "You're not the first person to say that," he told me, "but there's no active freight route on that stretch at night." I still drive highways. I don't really have a choice. But whenever I see a truck behind me that doesn't pass, I take the next exit no matter where it goes. Story 5, the mile marker. That never changed. I noticed the mile marker because it showed the same number twice. It was Halloween night, a little after 1 a.m., and I was driving home through a rural stretch of the Appalachian Mountains after visiting my cousin. I'd taken this road dozens of times before. 2 lanes, no shoulder, dense trees on both sides, the kind of place where your phone loses signal and the darkness feels heavier than it should. I remember passing mile 142 and thinking I was about 10 minutes from the main highway. I relaxed a little, turned the radio down, and focused on staying awake. About 3 minutes later, my headlights swept over another sign, mile 142. At first, I assumed I'd misread it. The signs were old and reflective, easy to mistake in the dark. I kept driving. The road curved, climbed slightly, then straightened out again. A third sign appeared, mile 142. This time, I slowed down. I checked my GPS. It was frozen. The blue dot stuck in one place. No service. That wasn't unusual out here, but the timing bothered me. I kept driving, telling myself the signs were probably mislabeled or placed too close together. The trees pressed in tighter, their branches forming a tunnel over the road. My headlights barely reached the edges. Then I saw it again. Mile 142. My chest tightened. I hadn't turned around. I hadn't taken any side roads. There were no intersections, just the same stretch of pavement repeating itself. I considered stopping, but something about the silence outside my car made me keep moving. No insects, no wind, not even the sound of tires from other vehicles. I rolled down my window a crack. The air smelled damp and metallic like wet leaves and rust. That's when I noticed the car behind me. It wasn't there before. I was sure of it. Old sedan, dull paint, headlights dim and yellow. It stayed far back, just close enough that I could see it when the road straightened. I sped up. The car sped up. I slowed down. It slowed down. We passed another sign, mile 142. My breathing got shallow. I turned the radio back on, desperate for noise, but all I got was static. Underneath it, though, I thought I heard something else, a faint clicking sound, like a turn signal. I checked my mirrors again. The car's right blinker was flashing. Click, click, click. But the road didn't have any turns. I took my foot off the gas and let the car slow almost to a crawl. The vehicle behind me didn't pass. It stayed exactly the same distance back, its blinkers still clicking. I flashed my hazards, hoping the driver would go around me. Nothing changed. We passed mile 142 again. I started to panic. I grabbed my phone and tried calling 911 even though I knew there was no signal. The call didn't go through, but my screen lit up just enough for me to see something written in the fog on my windshield. A word, turn. I wiped at the glass, heart hammering, but the letters were already fading. Ahead of me, for the first time, I noticed a narrow gravel road branching off to the right. No sign, no reflectors. Just a dark opening in the trees. The clicking behind me stopped. I looked in the mirror. The car was closer now, close enough that I could see a person sitting in the driver's seat. They weren't looking at the road. They were looking straight at me. I couldn't make out their face. It was just blank, like the features didn't want to resolve in my mind. I shook my head, fighting the urge to freeze. I told myself this was exhaustion, stress, paranoia. But when I passed the gravel road without turning, the headlights behind me suddenly went out. Complete darkness. I slammed the brakes, tires squealing, and sat there shaking. I waited for impact. It never came. When I looked back, the road behind me was empty. No car, no lights, no sound. I didn't wait. I turned around in the road and drove back toward the gravel turnoff. When I reached the spot where it should have been, there was nothing there, just trees and underbrush like it had never existed, and right past it, mile 143. I drove the rest of the way home without seeing another mile marker. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up the road online, Street View, maps, anything I could find. There is no mile 142 on that highway. It skips from 141 to 143. To this day, I don't know how long I was actually driving that night. I don't know who was behind me. But every Halloween, When I drive through the mountains, I avoid that road completely because I'm still not sure what would have happened if I had turned where the road wanted me to. Story 6, The Knock That Didn't Stop. I don't camp anymore, and it's not because of bears or bad weather. It's because of what happened on Halloween night in the Appalachian Mountains, when someone or something kept knocking on my tent and never said a word. I was in my late 20s at the time and had driven up into a remote part of West Virginia to clear my head. Work had been brutal, and I wanted a few days completely off-grid. The campsite I chose wasn't an official campground. It was one of those pull-off spots locals use. No signs, no facilities, just a flat patch of ground near a tree line and a creek about 50 yards away. I arrived just before sunset. The air was cold but still. Leaves covered the ground in thick layers, damp from earlier rain. I set up my tent, made a small fire, and cooked a simple meal. Everything felt calm, quiet in a good way. By the time full darkness set in, the forest had gone almost completely silent. That should have been my first warning. No crickets, no owls, no wind in the trees, just nothing. Around 10 p.m., I crawled into my sleeping bag and zipped the tent closed. I remember checking my phone one last time, no signal, battery low, and setting it beside me. I turned off my headlamp and let the darkness settle. I don't know how long I'd been lying there when I heard it. A knock, soft, slow, right near the front of the tent. I froze. At first I thought a branch had fallen or maybe an animal brushed against the fabric. I held my breath and listened. Nothing. Then another knock. This one was firmer, intentional. 3 slow taps. I whispered, "Hello?" No answer. I grabbed my headlamp and turned it on, shining it toward the tent wall. The thin fabric glowed, but I couldn't see any shadows outside. No movement, no shapes. I unzipped the tent just enough to peek out. The campsite was empty. The fire had burned down to glowing embers. Trees stood still all around me. No footsteps, no sounds of someone walking away. I told myself it was probably another camper messing around, though I hadn't seen a single car on the road in hours. I zipped the tent back up and lay down, heart pounding. About 5 minutes passed. Then the knocking started again. Same spot, same slow rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. This time it moved. The knocks traveled along the side of the tent like someone was walking around it, tapping as they went. Not scratching, not pushing, just knocking. I sat up, every muscle tight. "Who's there?" I called out, louder now. Nothing. I could hear my own breathing, loud and shaky. I strained to hear footsteps, rustling leaves, anything. There was none. The knocking stopped near the back of the tent, then started again at the front. I didn't sleep after that. I sat there for hours, headlamp on, knife in my hand, listening as the knocking repeated every 10 or 15 minutes. Always 3 taps, always slow, always deliberate, never a voice, never a cough, never a single word. Sometime after 2 a.m., it stopped completely. The silence that followed was worse. I stayed awake until the sky began to lighten, watching the tent walls for movement. When dawn finally came, I unzipped the tent and stepped out. Nothing was disturbed. No footprints in the leaves, no marks on the tent, no broken branches. But when I packed up my gear, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. On the front of my tent, right where the knocking had started, were 3 small indentations in the fabric. Not tears, not scratches, indented. Like someone had pressed hard with their knuckles. I left immediately. I didn't hike. I didn't stop for breakfast. I drove straight home. A few weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I mentioned the spot to a coworker who grew up in that area. I described the road, the creek, the pull-off. He went quiet for a second and asked, "You camp there alone?" I nodded. He told me locals don't stop there anymore. People had reported someone knocking on cars late at night. Always 3 knocks, always silence. And if you opened the door? He stopped himself and shook his head. "Never mind," he said. "Probably just kids messing around." But he wouldn't look me in the eye. I still don't know who or what was outside my tent that night. All I know is this: whatever it was didn't want to come in. It wanted me to come out.